Welcome to Winning the Game of Life. Known as Jungleman at the poker table, Dan Cates has gone from being the bag boy at McDonald's with no friends and a dead-end future to winning over $11 million in online poker, over $7 million in live tournaments, and is a World Series of Poker champion. He has found fame, fortune, been to incredible places all over the globe, and connected with some amazing people. It looks like Dan has won the game of life, but that is not the way he sees it. Dan sees winning as doing his part to help everyone in the world win. He knows he can't do it alone, though. He knows it's going to take a collective effort with anyone that wants to see the same thing. Join us each week as Dan starts the conversation to do just that. On the show, Dan will interview incredible individuals that have made the impossible possible. Those that have won the game of life, and those that want to help others win as well. Hit subscribe and follow Dan's journey on Instagram at @TheDanCates. Let's explore anyone and anything that can help make this world a better place, increasing the odds of us all winning the game of life. And now, here's your host, Dan Cates.
What's up, guys? We're back, and it's Dan Cates, or Jungleman, with the biggest Ukrainian winner of all time, I think, and former PokerStars pro, and you guys may not know, but he's also been in men's fitness, Eugene Katchalov.
Hey, Dan. Good to see you, man. Good to be on the podcast.
So what are you up to these days?
So these days I am up to Clash, basically into eSports with Luca Pagano, as you well know, as you're proudly one of our investors. And that takes quite a bit of time, and otherwise just playing a little bit of poker, not so much these days. I'm kind of hoping. My dream is to do an arc from being a recreational player in poker to go to, that I was a professional player in poker, and now back to being a recreational player in poker. So that's kind of where I'm at and what I'm working towards, poker-wise. Right. Business-wise, I'm working on Clash and doing a bit of trading as well. That's about it.
All right, now you're a recreational pro. Yeah. We'll talk about Clash in a bit. I don't think the audience is necessarily familiar with Clash, but it's a company that creates gaming communities and more, and yeah, it seems more like now you're an entrepreneur. But let's start with poker. How did you get into poker?
So I got into poker, like many people did, just playing with friends. This was like in 2003, I guess, right as I was finishing college. Just a couple of friends invited me to play some poker, and I really enjoyed the game. I didn't even learn the rules, when I finished my first session, but I just really liked it. So we just kept playing with friends and kind of got together on a weekly basis, and kept that going. And then I found out that you can play online, started playing sit and goes online on mostly, I think, party poker in those days, and started doing, reasonably well, making a little bit of money on the side. So that was kind of cool. So that was kind of the very, very early stage.
And how did this transition into, how did you figure out you were good, and how did you begin to make money? It just happened naturally? Was there anything you did to was there any extra effort you had to put in, or any shift in mentality, something like this?
So I think I was naturally always kind of good in different games. I've always liked games. I've always especially games where multiplayer games where there's any kind of psychology involved. I always try to kind of imagine what my opponents may be thinking, those kinds of games. Yeah, I've just always enjoyed games like that. And so poker for obvious reasons, I gravitated towards poker as I saw similar things in it, and I think what I think I really enjoyed about it is that there was no end to learning. That you can just always learn. There's always more to learn, and I always enjoyed kind of the more I played with my friends, the more I kind of realized their tendencies, and then took advantage of those tendencies. And I like that whole thing, and just kind of veering back and forth and taking advantage of people's tendencies and waiting for them to adjust, and then readjusting once they adjust. Like, all that stuff was really, really fun for me. So I think for that reason I really, really like poker. And I think I gravitated more towards cash games also in the beginning, again because I wanted to kind of play with with the same people, just because that's where I got the most kick out of it, kind of trying to see who can outsmart who.
Okay, so it was these psychological battles, and you sound like someone who'd be ego battling a bit by the way you describe all of this. But I don't recall you being like a big ego player. But I don't. Maybe you were.
I don't think I was. I tended to be, I think for the most part, kind of humble about it. But I did enjoy the competition a lot, and I certainly never expected to be to kind of reach the success that I did with it. When I was just starting out with it, it was just a game that I enjoyed, and it was more just recreation. I was still kind of studying in college, and planning to go looking for work, and kind of starting my career. And then I went into trading, as I planned. But I continued playing poker on the side, and I noticed that I started making a little bit extra money on it. I was doing fairly well in trading as well. So I kind of, both things were kind of growing for me. And at some point, poker just kind of became my passion, and I really liked the freedom that it gave me. I liked the idea of having to travel to different places to play poker, having to kind of give me an opportunity to see the world. So all those things kind of pushed poker towards being my profession, I guess, at that time. So I just kind of I kind of put everything else aside, and started playing poker professionally.
All right, it's pretty. It's sounds like a smooth beginning, I would say. It sounds like something that really you knew you were going to do, and you just leaned into it, and it just went well and took off.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I'm obviously skipping a lot of. There were obviously lots of stories where it certainly wasn't so easy. It wasn't just like smooth sailing, upwards.
Yeah, I think it always sounds smooth sailing when you say it. When you look at it from like the really far away or something. Exactly.
Then, from the macro view, it's a smooth sailing. But certainly, like if you zoom in just a little bit, there was lots of stress and downturns and losing. There was lots of that as well. Something that I always noticed, even as I was just starting to come up with, was I saw, as I got to know a lot of professional poker, other professional poker players, I saw that, many of them who've already reached, high levels of success, who've won, millions of dollars in tournaments or in cash games. And then they, so many of them kind of went broke and, lost all that money and went into debt. And, this wasn't really known by the public. And that was always a scary thought to me. So I think maybe that's something that kind of kept me humble, because I was always afraid of something like that happening to me.
Yeah, you always have to be aware of the possible risks and prepare for the future and that kind of thing. I was always a bit nervous about this kind of stuff, and had been I've had a few different. I always try to prepare really far in advance myself. And I keep changing my investment strategies and things like that as well. Turned out I lost quite a bit of money doing stupid stuff.
I think we all do, right? I've also lost money doing stupid stuff. I always like to think about it to be able to learn in anything, including in poker, but not just just in poker, but also in business, like you always have to lose money. Like losing money is the best way to learn. Because if you win, you don't really learn. I think losing is what teaches you the most.
I think winning and losing a bit of both loses. Excuse me.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Obviously, if you're always losing, you know, nothing's gonna happen. But I'm saying on balance, when between losing and winning, I think losing teaches you more than winning.
All right. What was the stupidest way you've ever lost money? If you want to talk about it.
All right. I've never been asked that. Let me think about it. The stupidest way I've lost money.
I bet I can be stupider.
It's not so obvious. I mean, I've certainly had, well, okay, maybe. All right, let's use this example. I invested a bunch of money into a restaurant. Basically, I was investing a bunch of money into a big sports complex in New York, and they were also planning to build a restaurant inside. And I additionally invested money into this restaurant on the side, thinking that we had someone who would kind of take care of it. And projections wise, we thought it was gonna go really well. And that ended up being just a horrific investment. It just kept draining money. And I just at some point, we just, ended up, giving it away, kind of just giving away control of it, because it just kept draining money. And that taught me that the restaurant business is really, really tough. And unless it's really like you sitting there and, fully working on it, or there's really someone really, really close that is going to work their butts off, and is incentivized to do so. Restaurant business is really tough. So I think I was very naive, expecting that to just kind of work out. So I'll use that example.
Yeah, I did a number of things like that. I had a real estate project that, I did have people that were incentivized to do well in it, but it just it ended up being a major disaster where I took out like a hard money loan, and I bought a property and thought it would be an easy flip in to make money. And then it just ended up being a massive disaster.
Whoa.
Huh? This is a long story.
Yeah, well, I said, whoa. Yeah, I think as you learn, once you start investing, I think you learn that there are, rarely easy investments. So, and I feel like you learn something from each failure, little by little. But I think something that we've discussed in the past, I remember like when we were hanging out, is I think the number one rule of investing is trusting the people who you're investing with. I think that's always like the very first step. If you don't have that, it doesn't matter how good the investment is, doesn't matter how little risk you see at the time of investment. I think trusting the people that you're investing with is number one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think. Well, you have to know. It's hard to know. It's hard to know. Firstly, that people are trustworthy in the sense of they won't steal from you. Although I found people don't really exactly steal necessarily unless they're desperate. But in my opinion, trust means to really trust someone means that they're going to do a good job, and that they're going to be on it and do all this, and basically be good at what they do. I think that's the real difficulty.
And the other part of it is also to think about how they would handle themselves when times are bad. Because I think a lot of times people act kind of ethically and good when things are going well, but but then change when times are going bad and can act quite unethically. So I think it's also important to kind of see how people react to losing situations.
Yeah, that's true. Although it's hard to get a glimpse of that, or I guess you can probe for when they do that kind of thing. Well, you would know. You're the entrepreneur. You're the guy sizing people up on doing the psychological warfare in the interviews, I presume, and all that stuff. Why don't you talk about your biggest challenges playing poker?
My biggest challenge?
Challenges playing poker.
My biggest challenge, probably dealing with losses, dealing with and self-doubt. Throughout the multitude of down streaks that I went through in my career, a lot of them gave me doubt. A lot of them kind of made me question myself and made me kind of question whether I was just being lucky before, and now it's all coming to an end. And do I really know what's going on? Is the game changing? Am I no longer plus EV? All these things, and that's kind of constantly ongoing. And figuring out the right answer, it's difficult because you never really get confirmation of a right answer, until I guess you actually just win, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what counts. But you don't really know whether you're adjusting properly or adjusting just because you're losing and actually making worse decisions. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's always when you're losing constantly, it's really hard to know that you're playing well, even if you keep making the right decisions. It would always mess with my head. That I had plenty of times where I'd play someone and keep losing to them and wonder why am I losing this guy? And I always think maybe he's doing something better than me or whatever. Usually it wasn't true, and it just took a really long time to see that. And eventually, turn around.
It takes quite a bit. Maybe as I see, that probably takes quite a bit of winning before you get enough confidence to kind of to remain confident even when you start losing. But when you're starting out, it's definitely very difficult before you've kind of proven to yourself that you actually know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's super hard when you're first starting out. I think, by the way, that because you had success in games, I personally think that people who've already had success in games will find it easier to succeed in poker because they've effectively already proven to themselves that they can succeed with games, if that makes sense. They can how do I say? Yeah, well, they can succeed. Yeah, they've just had successes and things that they've tried to do, and then basic poker's a tougher version of that compared to other games. It's if you're taking steps up to bigger things in life. If you're doing the gaming route, I personally think that poker is kind of like that.
The way I see it is when you're just gaming, right, you don't really stand anything to lose, right? So the risk reward is, if you lose, whatever, you lose a game, you're not really losing any assets and any money. And then as you grow in life, you start playing games where you actually have things at risk. If you go to work for, a regular job, okay, maybe you're not risking anything, but now you're just kind of, looking to gain something on an hourly basis. If you become an entrepreneur, that's again just another game, but where you're actually risking something and trying to make something. And I feel like poker is somewhere in between those two, where poker is somewhere in between entrepreneurship and regular gaming, right? So poker is the next step level up from gaming, where you actually stand to lose something. So it's kind of very direct because it's actual money. So I feel like maybe even poker teaches you a little bit about life and a little bit about entrepreneurship and about risks. And about losing, and about what it really means. Because I think you may not get that same sense from just gaming, where you don't really stand to lose anything except just maybe some of your ego when you lose in a regular game. In poker, I feel like it might prepare you a little bit more for entrepreneurship or trading or whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's how I view it. Yeah, trading is a pretty obvious step. I would think it's a tougher version of a game than poker. I personally go that route. And did you go ahead?
Go ahead.
Did you do trading?
I was just gonna. Yeah, I did. I was doing trading at the same time as I was doing poker. Then I stopped, and now I'm kind of dabbling in it again a little bit. I think it's definitely harder than poker, but it's just also just such a much bigger game. But I think the biggest difference is essentially that in trading you're dealing with mass psychology, where in poker you're mostly dealing with singular psychology. Like you're facing an opponent and you're trying to figure out. It's kind of like singular psychology, right? You just have to outsmart, the specific opponent who you're in a hand against, or the specific few opponents who you're in a hand against. Whereas in trading, you're trying to kind of outsmart crowds, so you're trying to understand crowd psychology.
Yeah, well, there's some crowd psychology in poker to some extent. There's population tendencies that you kind of eventually figure out. I would think there's I think it's even a bit more studied in trading, just because there's not like a handbook on there's not really a resource of what crowds are exactly doing in poker, particularly and what the crowd even is, because sometimes you're playing with a field full of bad regulars, or a field full of fish, or a field full of tough pros, or it's really hard to bucket these sorts of fields. And it's easy to, if you're not really observant, it's easy to make various mistakes against certain ones.
Agreed, because I agree, because I think that's certainly something I remember, that I didn't learn early enough, but I did, learn eventually, is that, in poker, let's say, depending on the tournament or the cash game that I was playing, I really had to change my style, kind of drastically, depending on, the average strength of my table. So just kind of doing different things and applying different average strategies.
Mm-hmm. Well, what made you decide to do other things besides poker?
I think, after I played poker for 14 years or something, I was just kind of thinking to myself, do I really want to continue being a professional poker player, when I'm 50, when I'm 60? And I did not want that. I kind of, and I've always kind of dreamed of entrepreneurship or doing something in business, and, maybe also, kind of playing games that are not zero sum. I think that's the only kind of downside in poker, is that it's a zero sum game. Basically, for those who don't know, basically it means that, for you to win, someone has to lose. Whereas in business, that's not really the case. You can just kind of build a bigger pie. So I kind of wanted to try my hand at that. And like I said, I've always loved poker, but I just wanted to. I didn't enjoy studying it as much and grinding it as much. Also, obviously, the game was getting tougher and tougher, and I just felt like, even if I continue studying, I didn't know how good my win rate could remain. So I just kind of wanted to focus on other things.
Yeah, the fact that it wasn't a greater than zero sum game as well was part of the reason why I wanted to move on myself. And because it was sort of demoralizing to, well, first of all, it is a little bit demoralizing to, just keep taking from someone else. If it didn't feel like I was exactly cutting people down constantly, it didn't feel like I was always doing that in poker, to be honest, because there'd always be VIPs or whatever, and it'd be it was more like the poker pros were their friends, and are kind of emotionally bonded and supporting each other, sort of thing, along that path. Although, obviously it is a less than zero sum game, and eventually the fish get bored and go somewhere else. And eventually the pros lose, and the pros have to battle each other, and then someone has to lose. So on top of that realization, plus, there's some inclination. I think there's an inner inclination for people to want to do good, which implies a greater than zero sum. And Well, greater than zero sum things have a ton of potential because, as we've seen in poker, if you keep taking from the the ecosystem becomes smaller. And as you said, you can have a bigger and bigger pie if it's a greater than zero sum game, which is, basically there's a ton more potential in greater than zero sum games.
Yeah,
but exactly. It was the same route that it sounded like a very similar route as what I took to move on to different things. I understand one of those things that you moved on to was men's fitness. You were in the magazine, weren't you? I thought you were on the cover.
No, not on the cover. Unfortunately, I wanted to be, but no, that was too far a reach. Yeah, that was actually when I was still playing poker and traveling with Elke and Lincoln, our trainer, everywhere, kind of, and he was training us, and I always dreamed of like, can I ever have a six pack? And Lincoln said, yeah, you can. I can, if you follow what I say for 6 months, you'll have one. And I was like, whoa, really? I was like, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready to make the sacrifice. And he was like, let's create another goal. Let's do a photo shoot in, at the end of it in Brazil to kind of memorize the moment. So you also have something to reach towards. So me and Elke, I remember, started training, dieting properly. And I achieved it, and that was really cool. And I remember, I remember at the time I also had a dream to be, in like men's fitness or men's health, and I had a contact who helped me get in touch with them, and they kind of liked my story, and I had some really good before and after pictures. Another time because of my poker fame, they did a small thing on me. So, but that was kind of cool. Yeah.
Was there like any money on it? I thought there was some money on it for some reason, or it was just you were committed and wanted to win.
No, there was no money on it. No money in it. I was just committed, and I really wanted to do it. We had other bets with Elke, but we never bet for money. We always bet for like, kind of like, quote unquote beneficial punishments. We had like poker bets where you have to do like 1,000 push-ups in one day, or you have to like bike over 100 kilometers, or you have to like run a marathon, or you have to like learn each other's language, stuff like that, where it was like punishment, but you get something good out of it. So we never bet money, but we always bet stuff like that.
Oh, well, what were the conditions where you had to run 100 or bike 100 kilometers? That sounds a lot easier, by the way, than doing 1,000 push-ups in a day. I don't like, holy shit.
Yeah, that was during a scoop. One of the scoops, I don't remember which year it was, maybe like 2012, 2013. We were in Europe, and we were in Cannes in France with Elke, and no, at the time I think I think we were in Greece grinding the scoop, and the bet was like, who is higher on the the ultimate leaderboard, who cashes more, and I think who wins more money, something like that. And then we bet, for what, I don't remember exactly which bets for what, but we had one bet for 1,000 push-ups, within 24 hours. And then the other one was to bike from Cannes to San Remo, which was the next DPT. I think that's like, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, that's like, it's like 120 something kilometers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
around.
It's like a nice biking trail and whatever. So that's like a experience. Huh?
It's nice in the first half, it's nice in the first half, not in the second half. The second half was pretty brutal because it's like you're just kind of riding along the highway. Like in the first half, it's beautiful. You're riding along France, and you have the sea, the seaside view, so it's really beautiful. But then it's not so good because you're kind of riding along the highway. It doesn't feel so safe. So I lost. I won 2 out of the 3 bets. I lost the 1,000 push-ups bet. So I did the 1,000 push-ups. I actually have a video of it where Lincoln taped me, and I actually it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I thought it would be a nightmare, but I actually knocked it off, pretty quickly. I remember we did a workout in the morning, morning where I did like 200, and then in the afternoon, I just finished it off the other 800. Obviously with breaks. I don't remember how long it took me. But it wasn't so bad. Like I thought it would be insane. But I did maybe like 20 at a time and then just do like significant breaks. But it wasn't so bad. I was surprised myself. I thought it would be way more difficult. And then the bike one, Elke lost the bike one, but then we decided as a group, just go as a group because it's going to be fun, more fun that way. We don't want to force Elke to go by himself. So we went with Elke, Lincoln, and Petra. That was really fun. We kind of prepared for that. We did a special diet, some special bike training for a couple, for like 3-4 days before that. So that was good. And then Elke lost the other bet where he had to learn, my language, which is Russian. And I remember he was studying that for a while. He was like 6 months. I remember he knew a little bit of it. And then it was just like too frustrating for him. So we agreed that he can just run like a marathon for it at some point, and he did. So that's kind of how we get even. And I remember also at the time afterwards, we were also planning to do some more cool bets, but also with Andrei Akari. So me, Elke, and Andrei Akari, we were gonna do like worldwide bets, like with like marathons, like I forget what those called, like those like different types of running, like not just like straight marathons, but like with barriers in front of you, and I forget what they're called. But it ended up not happening, unfortunately, because we couldn't find a good time where that was convenient for everyone. We were all kind of busy, but those were definitely fun memories.
Awesome! Wow, I didn't know you had these you had multiple grand physical challenge bets. Like I don't think I could do 1,000 push-ups, even when I was like. I mean, I'm a little bit below peak now, but I'm just thinking about it. 800 push-ups sounds really nasty. Or in one set.
I think you'd be surprised. I don't know. I think if you spoke to Lincoln, I think you'd be surprised. It might, if you structure it properly, you can do it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for believing in my push-up ability. Yeah, I'm curious if you make any other crazy fitness bets. I'm curious. I remember we had a push-up bet ourselves, and then we had to call it off for some reason. But whatever, we were like pretty evenly matched. I remember. Yeah.
I don't remember why we had to call it off. Oh, maybe I think I injured my shoulder or something. I don't remember if that was it. But yeah, bets are fun. I know you've had bets with Elke and with others, and I think it's a really good way to motivate yourself to do things. Whether it's for money or for other quote unquote punishments. I think they're very, very useful for things like that.
I've decided to punish myself for like $2,000 a junk food as of recently. Because I can't. I'm just out of control. I have to do something. Have you made any other crazy bets?
No, I don't think I have. I might consider it though. What's your junk bet like? So if you eat junk food, you have to, I don't know, donate 2,000 to charity or something, or what is it that you're doing?
You know what? I've actually made it with Elke, and yeah, just that if I eat something that's junk food, there's like some kind of, beyond a certain limit, because a little bit of junk food is actually okay. And recently I've read that it's better than being very strict, as a matter of fact. So I think there's some kind of allowance, like weekly to handle it. And I don't think it was specified, but it has to be quite small. But yeah, if anything over that allowance is 2,000 a piece, 2,000 a serving. Let's put it that way. It's
right.
Almost there now. It's almost there.
So from his side as well, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, tell me how you got into entrepreneurship. What inspired you, and how did you begin that whole process?
So, I kind of became friends with Luca Pagano, who's also Team PokerStars Pro, maybe 2014, I think it was, or 15, and we kind of hit it off. I really liked him. He's really bright, he had experience and in businesses, and after a few years of chatting, we found that we were both kind of fans of esports, and we decided to try our hand with it, especially as we were both kind of looking to transition out of playing poker professionally. And for me personally, I wanted to see what it's like. I've always read that it's extremely difficult, doing a startup, and I've always wanted to kind of try my hand at different things. So I did, and it was very, very difficult. And I honestly, looking back at the past 4 or 5 years, I have the utmost respect for Luca, because he kind of leads our project, and he kind of leads the day-to-day. He's the CEO, and the all the success that we've achieved would not have been possible if it was not for him. I think it requires a unique kind of personality that is extremely outgoing, optimistic, and just someone who's like a doer, not just thinker. So like for me, I think I've learned where my biggest weaknesses are and where my biggest strengths are. I think my weaknesses are more operationally speaking. I don't think I'm a particularly good worker per se, but I think my strengths are more strategic and kind of more high level. I think that's certainly something I've learned, throughout my experience with Clash. And we're still kind of in early stages. We're still kind of in the beginning of building our company. We've gone through our first round of outside fundraising. Luca and I invested a few $1 million of our own money into it when we started it. We're kind of very, very proud of our achievements. The company just keeps growing. So in that sense, it's great. But like I said, there's a lot of challenges with it that you still kind of have to handle on a day-to-day basis. But if you zoom out on a macro picture, it's a really cool experience.
Yeah, it does sound. It sounds very open-ended, and it sounds like there's a lot of hidden unknowns in it. And it sounds as though you have to kind of figure out where your strengths fit into the picture and find the right people that complement those.
Exactly.
So I don't really even understand how it comes together, to be honest, because what was it like? You guys had an idea and you're like, let's do this. And then, because also when you're starting out, how do you know really what your strengths are in the corporate world? Or is it even the corporate world, the entrepreneurship world? And then, how do you know you and your partner would get along? Like, what if your partner there ends up being some kind of clashing? I don't understand how this all begins, how does it start?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's certainly risks, involved in that. Certainly trust between Luca and myself was, the most important thing when we first started. So, we had that, and, that was the most important thing. And then, figuring out, what the company would be about. Certainly we didn't, when we first started, we didn't know that we would be building what we are actually building today. At the time when we started, it was just an idea that we wanted to do something in the esports industry. We wanted to focus on the community somehow, and kind of enter the space and, see where the opportunity is there. So in the beginning, we just kind of got a Hearthstone team together, a professional team. We traveled with them around the world as they competed, and we kind of networked and tried to understand, how the industry functions. Where we felt that there was opportunity, and it took us a couple of years before we realized where the real opportunity is. I think we realized it was actually in events, running events and building communities. So that's kind of where we are today, and what we're focused on today is basically creating a platform, an events platform for many different games and esports games, and kind of entertaining our communities utilizing events, and at the same time having professional poker players and influencers under contract who compete under our brand and drive marketing exposure to us, to many different big brands out there, and to many different communities. So that's how we kind of grow our brand through actual competitions in esports and influencers, and then we utilize those to build our events both offline and online. Since the beginning of last year, we started a platform called Clash Community App, and there we run basically daily events in many different games. So that's kind of what we're focusing on today.
What was it that made you figure out that this was what the gaming community needed? I mean, it's kind of, honestly, it's connected to poker in some ways. Kind of the way we saw poker work, the way we saw how PokerStars became as big as it was. I mean, PokerStars started as an events company, right? Like running online events, and then getting professional poker players like me, Luca, and others on board as ambassadors, which they would use kind of as marketing tools, right? And then ask us to come to their live events, to play with recreational players, to play in charity events, and then kind of play and then continue entertaining their communities online. So we ended up going with a very similar approach in esports, essentially having professional esports players, professional gamers who compete in a worldwide level, and then we ask them to play in our events and engage with our communities and entertain our communities, and that's how we build them. But yeah, I just think that's where we kind of saw the biggest opportunity, because people love to compete in many different games, and there's lots of different games out there, but we saw an opportunity to actually create events around these games and create all sorts of fun events, not necessarily competitive events, not always, but also fun-based events, essentially just to create entertainment for people who like to play games. All right, well, it seems like something that's very complicated to do, and sounds like a big need to supply, because definitely, especially, it feels like these days, at least in my experience in various startups, and talking with a lot of these people at various conventions, building platforms seems to be a common, just building the opportunities for many other people to do other things basically seems to be something that has tons of potential, and that people are realizing has tons of potential. It's as if people are, the greater than zero sumness in a lot of these fields is kind of ballooning, and gaming also seems to be really getting bigger and bigger as well. So
yeah,
from my understanding, what you guys are doing seems really auspicious.
Yeah, that's exactly what we saw about the in general, esports and gaming in general. It's growing absolutely insane. Gaming in general is already as of last year, I think it's $170 billion industry. It's bigger than music and movie industries combined. And esports, is by itself, I think it's $1 billion industry, but it's growing like 15% a year. So both of them are just growing so fast, and considering some of the similarities that we saw between gaming and poker, we thought, why not take some of the things that we learned in poker and apply them to gaming, which is going to be just a much bigger industry than poker, and kind of still we felt it was still in its early stages of growth, and the potential was massive. So certainly what we're doing is, it's even though we've achieved a lot of success, it's still nothing compared to where we want to go. So we're shooting really high with Clash. We want to become kind of like a platform for events, eventually, kind of like PokerStars was for poker, but maybe without the gambling factor that poker has, and which kind of maybe turned off a lot of sponsors, and made it kind of illegal in some of the countries. I think in that sense we have it easier, but at the same time our business model is a little bit different. But I think the opportunity is absolutely massive.
Well, I'm happy for you. It sounds like, from my understanding, Kulash is doing great, and it sounds like just there's a lot of just the future looks bright. Let's put it that way. What were your biggest challenges getting it? Yeah, what were your biggest challenges building this startup?
Certainly, I think one of the biggest challenges was when we actually decided we'd need to do fundraising, outside fundraising. Exactly how difficult it would be. And also COVID hit at the time, so that kind of that forced us to adjust a lot, not just to fundraising, but also to our strategy. Because before COVID hit, we were focused on mostly live events. We were, we had a lot of agreements in place to do lots of cool live gaming events around Italy and around Spain. And then obviously, as soon as COVID hit, all of that kind of fell apart, and it forced us to accelerate on our online events platform plans, because originally we thought we were just kind of focused on offline, and then start building the online part. So that was a big learning experience, and kind of tough, but I'm happy that we kind of got through it. So I'd say that was probably like one of our biggest challenges, and also the fundraising process, which took quite a bit of time also, I think, because to a large degree because of COVID.
All right. Yeah, I haven't had much experience building a startup, so it's hard for me to relate too much.
Yeah, well, all I can tell you is that I've read a lot of books before we started this, like about how difficult a startup is, and you have to be like a self-masochist to start a startup because of how insane it is. And so I've kind of expected it, but I still, it's all true. Like it's so difficult. Like and things are kind of always moving against you. There's just so many things that can go wrong. So the risks are really high. So certainly it's really rewarding when things start to work out. But it is very difficult. So it's certainly not for everyone. Like I would say, like, you really have to be ready for it before you start. Like, you cannot even imagine the amount of complexity and hardship that you have to go through beforehand until you actually start getting jump in with your feet.
All right, everyone. Eugene with his warning: don't make a startup unless you feel pain, unless you like pain.
Yeah, it's very high risk, very high reward, also potentially. But I mean, statistically, what is it? I think it's like 90 or 95% of startups fail. So it's pretty brutal. It's brutal. But you do learn a lot. So no matter what, I feel like poker, that's the one thing I'm certainly, one of the many things I'm certainly thankful to poker for is, after going through many different losses in poker, and figuring out that losses teach me so much. I think it's the same thing in entrepreneurship. Every loss, every hardship teaches you something. So I think that's the best way to look at it. every loss is an opportunity to learn something. And the only way I feel like a loss is bad is if you keep repeating the same mistake.
Yeah.
Or if you've risked too much, where you're kind of where you no longer have a shot at trying it again. So just like in poker, right? Like you never want to play in a tournament that you can't afford. That if you lose, or you're in a cash game where if you lose, you're going to be like busted or close to busted. It's kind of the same thing in entrepreneurship. You want to make sure you still have enough bullets to have other shots once you've learned your lesson.
All right. Well, I also understand. Well, firstly, I want to comment on that. I mean, in poker, one of the biggest things that matters a lot ultimately is bankroll management and choosing your battles. So it makes sense that would apply for entrepreneurship also. I mean, definitely. I always thought entrepreneurship was a massive, massive gamble. I always thought it was a bigger gamble than poker. I thought poker was like, okay, well, you can only do so much in poker. But in entrepreneurship, I've just heard of people starting businesses and like losing all their money, and I'm just like,
yeah.
You have to not have runaway costs and all that stuff. I also understand that you have delved into the spiritual realm a little bit, although I know a little bit about what the philosophy or whatever you want to call it that you believe related to that. I don't really understand a whole lot of what your experience is in the spiritual world. Can you tell us a bit about your foray into the outside, the realm outside of current understanding? I think spiritual has to be in that realm, right? I mean, it's just right. Pretty sure that makes sense, because otherwise it wouldn't be spiritual.
Yeah, I mean, I've this is all very new to me as well, because I've most of my life I've been an atheist, or at least agnostic most of my life, and I at the beginning of last year I started kind of looking into. I've never taken any drugs. I don't like alcohol. Like I don't like any of that stuff. And at some point, I started reading a lot about that there was a lot of money being poured into psychedelics research, specifically like psilocybin, which is like magic mushrooms, and LSD, and that a lot of research was being done in different universities throughout the U.S. And how and some of the experiences that people have had with it. So at some point, after doing a lot of research, I decided to try it for myself. I tried psilocybin, magic mushrooms, at the beginning of last year, and it was just an incredible experience for me, where I don't know if you can, where I think some spirituality was born in me. So it's very difficult to describe. It's very difficult to put these things into words. But I think what I've kind of started to believe is that there is certainly more to life than what we see in front of our eyes, than this world. And I found it fascinating, and I've wanted to continue kind of diving into it and researching it more and learning more about it. I've always been a very, very curious person. I've always wanted to know how things are built. I've always wanted to know more about myself, about kind of my true nature, and just people in general. So certainly, I think I credit that experience with psychedelics and opening my mind, and making me experience things that I never kind of imagined were possible before. And whether they're real or not, it's incredible that our minds are capable to experience something like this. So I, in a very high level, I would say that's my interest in spirituality. That's my, experience with certain psychedelics. I've had other experiences with psychedelics as well. I went to Mexico, and I did something called a bufo ceremony, which bufo is like this basically it's pure 5-MeO DMT. That's the chemical name of it. It's basically a frog, some frog that
Oh
only
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it only grows in, I mean, not grows. It only lives in Mexico and Colorado. I think it's the Colorado river toad. It secretes this sweat or something, I guess you can call it. And basically you can dry it and then you can inhale it. And it gives you an extremely powerful psychedelic experience. It's very short. It's only 15 minutes, but it's extremely powerful. And I found that to be also incredibly interesting. It's very difficult to put into words. It's very, very different from mushrooms, but it's very, very deep. But it certainly opens up your eyes to to how much bigger the world is than I originally thought, at least. So I kind of credit that as well in my kind of ongoing interest in if you want to call it spirituality, then yeah, in spirituality.
Yeah, that was the drug that I wanted to take for a while, or whatever you want to call it. An experience I wanted to have, because I've heard I've heard multiple things that suggested some kind of experience that gave various spiritual ideas credibility. You could put it that way.
Exactly. Yeah, I think after doing these things, I actually started looking into what some of the like religions and especially like Buddhism and Zen and Hinduism, like what they're saying, and I was like, wow, and now I actually understand. Now it makes sense where they're getting this stuff from. Like they talk about the oneness of everything and the non-duality of things, and it's one thing when you just hear it, but it's a completely different thing when you actually experience it, when you feel what non-duality, what this oneness can be. It's an incredible, it's kind of an incredible thing. And I just, as I said before, like I'm extremely curious person by nature. So, exploring this world is, very, very interesting to me. And also considering, everything that I've learned about these substances, they are nothing, from what I understand, they are nothing like drugs. There's no addictiveness to them. There's very little downside, if any, to them. So given the risk factors, I felt like it was just a free roll, essentially. Not much to lose. So why not?
I've read that they're fairly safe, although I'm pretty sure I cannot advocate using them necessarily. I'll say that I'm curious myself I've not really tried any of these sorts of things beyond nothing really crazy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I would certainly not advocate, people to use them kind of regularly. They are certainly not things you do recreationally. So, I certainly wouldn't advocate it. I would more say, like, if you're curious, you can, I would suggest, I would recommend that you read up on it a lot before even considering to try. I think it's always really, really important to understand all the, kind of all the risk factors involved, because there's certainly risks involved, especially if you have, like, any kind of psychological issues or psychological problems. You may want to really give it a careful look. So kind of leave it at that, I think.
What do you want to talk about? What let me think. Well, is there anything else you'd like to talk about that's on your mind, with spirituality or with entrepreneurship or the direction of QLash or
Clash?
I was gonna
we always get that. So don't worry. We always get that. Let me think.
Any
Well,
go ahead.
I would maybe something I've just been thinking about, on a high level is how important optimism is in general. Like, just to be optimistic in life in general. I think, and then learning to see bad things, and whether it's losing sessions in poker, or losing in businesses, or anything kind of bad happening to you in life. If you just look at it in a different way, like instead of looking at it like, why is this happening to me, and why am I so unlucky, or why am I so kind of looking at it in a pessimistic way, if you just kind of learn to see things from a different perspective, from an optimistic perspective, I think your life can be a lot better. I think you see this in all successful people. I think they tend to be very optimistic. There's very few successful people who are naturally pessimists, and I think it's because they've a lot of successful people. Granted, they all got lucky in something, but I think what most people don't realize is that they've had their share of bad luck for a long time, but they didn't quit trying, and they didn't stop, and they kept their optimism until they actually hit upon something that that was fortunate and made them successful. So I think that applies to all things in life, and I've certainly been thinking about that a lot. The perspective of how you can view life and how you can view your success or failure, and then how much of it is actually under your control. I think a lot of people, a lot of us like to blame others for things maybe that bad things that might be happening to us, but I think what you realize more and more is that almost everything is on you, every problem that you have can be solved by you, and by the way you look at things and by your perspective on things. So I would say, in a very general sense, I think that's been very, very helpful for me, that realization. So I'm kind of grateful that I think I naturally tend towards being an optimist.
I think there are multiple forms of optimism. I think one that a lot of successful people have, at least, or they need, is something like, I want to use the word hope, in that something like seeing the best possible outcome potentially, or to keep having that in mind, or keep viewing that as possible, if that makes sense. I think a lot of them need that, particularly when things are going bad, because what else can you really have? Or, you can have acceptance, and to continue to be, you definitely need the proactiveness, but part of the proactiveness is linked to hope, I think, is my personal understanding of what you're saying. Though there's also optimism in the sense of being positive with the way you carry yourself, and positive about how you're experiencing things and this kind of thing. I think that's a different kind of optimism.
Yeah, I agree. There's lots of different optimisms, and I think when you kind of hit troubled waters is the real kind of test of how truly optimistic you can remain in the face of failure or trouble.
Failure after failure after failure, and all these sorts of
things.
Yeah, there's a few different permutations of failures, as we've all learned in our own unique ways. I imagine so with entrepreneurship too, especially when you get your hopes real up. I personally find it particularly devastating when your hopes, it seems like you're almost going to get there, and then bang, that's the slow roll. The slower roll.
Yeah.
That's you have to keep it up in that situation quite a lot.
Absolutely.
Poker teaches you that. Poker teaches you to get destroyed.
Poker is really a good teacher for a lot of things in life.
That's what I think too, and I'm exploring that idea. I've got an idea related to that, actually, to use poker as education somehow, but there's some things that need to be worked out. But anyway, do you want to talk more about Clash before you go, or have anything else you want to say?
So, just for whoever we're always kind of grateful for feedback. So if you can kind of download our app, the Clash community app, and tell us what you think. I think especially poker players will be kind of familiar with the idea of it, because essentially it's it's a place where you can find events and many different games such as Clash Royale, Brawl Stars, FIFA, and tell us what you think, and tell us where we can improve, and maybe what you like or what you don't like. I think certainly coming from any poker fans, that I think that would be kind of useful. And just in general, if you have any feedback or anything you want to say about it, I think please reach out to me. I think you can find me on Twitter, at Eugene Katchalov, and send me a message there if you'd like. I think that's probably it.
All right, guys. Eugene Katchalov, Clash, possibly the community builder and events planner of gaming in the future. Is that right? Events organizer, excuse me. And Optimism. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And thank you all for watching. Thank you, Eugene, for being on the show.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, this was fun, and time flew by, and I wish you luck with this podcast. So hope everyone kind of enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks. All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Winning the Game of Life. Tune in next week for another great episode. Of course, hit subscribe and follow Dan on Instagram at @TheDanCates.